And I'm proud to be able to say that I get to volunteer every year to come and do some of these programs on the anniversary of the battle. When we're choosing programs to do, quite often there's a lot that goes into choosing the programs. There's a lot of them. I get to do 8 over the course of the weekend, but some have to be on the first day, some have to be on the second day, some have to be on the third day. We come up with 8 ideas for the 4 programs on April 6th. One of them is going to have to be Fraley Field, so you only have 3 programs, and sometimes, and I always like to do one that I've done before. And well, this is the program that I wrote new. This year's program is the one that is trying out something new. Like to follow a particular unit sometimes, and it could be Union, it could be Confederate. You get to know the people, you get to know the unit, you get to know the commanders, you get to know the soldiers, you get to know the communities that they come from. So these unit-based walks can be really informative and they can be really fun. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I've done many unit-based walks before. We've done the regulars. We're going to do those again tomorrow. We've done the Kentucky Brigade, the Confederate Kentucky Brigade. Done Sam Wood's Brigade. I've done Sherman's Division. So today we're just working down the list, and we arrived at Veach's Brigade. Why Veach's Brigade? Why not? I can tell you this, for some reason, Veach's Brigade always just gets kind of mixed up. You know? Colonel James Veach and his Illinois soldiers and Indiana soldiers, Union soldiers, they just get kind of mixed up in there. They're part of the narrative. They wrote long reports. There's plenty of stuff in the official record on it, but in the books, they're there, but they're just kind of mixed up. They don't fight with their own division. They fight with someone else's division. The people fighting in those divisions don't really notice them or don't say much about them, and then they get mixed up in some fighting that is rather terrible and very bloody and not well organized, and it ends bad for them. So it's a really interesting story, but it's a story that tends to be sort of lost in the Shiloh story. So I thought today we'd get to know these guys, get to know Veach's Brigade, Colonel James Veach, from Spencer County, Indiana. He's an interesting guy. He was a Republican. Now, Spencer County, Indiana is far south Indiana, and that's where you'll find the Lincoln Boyhood Home, Lincoln Homestead Home, National Park Unit, and so that's where Lincoln grew up, from the time he moved to Indiana until he was 21 or so. So a lot of the people in this Indiana regiment are going to be old neighbors or kinfolk or friends of neighbors of kinfolks, people that might have been associated with Lincoln. Among them was Veach. I don't know whether Veach or the Veaches ever knew Lincoln or the Lincolns, but they're neighbors, you know. So Veach lives down there. He lived down there in Spencer County in South Indiana, a Republican in a Democratic congressional district. And he gained a lot of respect among his neighbors for being one of those politicians that's always in opposition, and he always gets out there and he always runs and he always loses, and then he comes back and he's on the ballot again the next time, running as a Republican. Of course, this is just from 1854 to 1860. Always coming back, running as a Republican and losing in the Democrat district. So the war comes, and heavily Democratic Spencer County turns out enthusiastically for the Union. They organize a number of companies and some regiments Among them, the 25th Indiana Regiment. And even though the Republican Veach has lost all of these congressional elections, the White House and the State House in Indiana, the White House in Washington and the State House in Indiana now both belong to Republican. So Veach will not have to stand for election to the colonelcy of the 25th Indiana. Governor Oliver Morton makes him colonel of the regiment. He's a political officer. Not going to pretend that Veach is not what they call political generals. He did make general. He was pretty good though. He learned his job. He really did his homework. He learned his job, and he led the 25th Indiana. He trained the 25th Indiana. He became a brigade commander. Commanded the brigade here at Shiloh. Raised to division command later in the war. Got a star. Became General James Veach. And so he contributed his part. He did his part in leading the Union Army, leading the Army of the Tennessee, leading his brigade here, later leading a brigade in a division in the 16th Corps of the Army of the Tennessee. Led them during the Atlanta campaign. I'm going to talk about him right here. Some of the other men in Veach's brigade, also neighbors of the Lincolns. I don't know how close they are, probably not many, but the 15th, the 14th, 15th, and 46th Illinois Infantry Regiments all come from the central part of the state of Illinois. Mostly some of them over toward the west, toward the Mississippi River. But certainly I think the 15th and the 46th both include Bloomington in their recruiting districts and places that were part of the Illinois 8th Judicial Circuit. Towns that Lincoln would have passed through when he was writing the circuit. So this is a brigade. If we want to know something about it, this is a brigade that may have people who know the president in it. And even if it doesn't have any people that know the president in it, it's people that consider themselves from Old Abe's neck of the woods. The 25th Indiana from southern Indiana, Spencer County, and then the 3 Illinois regiments, 14, 15, and 46 from central Illinois. They were part of General Stephen Hurlbut's division. That is the 4th Division of the Army of the Tennessee. And they came into being during the Fort Donelson campaign, about 2 months before the Battle of Shiloh. So they arrived at Pittsburgh Landing with General Hurlbut, and there's General Hurlbut's headquarters right over there. And they made their camp with the rest of the division. Now Hurlbut's division is camped in Cloud Field on the other side of the road. That's Jacob Lauman's brigade. They're camped right over here. See a camp marker right there. And that's Williams' 1st Brigade. But they won't be part of our story. The Hamburg-Savannah Road runs from Hamburg down there all the way up to Savannah, right in front of General Hurlbut's headquarters. It passes the Michigan Monument where we were parked, goes on down into into these woods, and in those woods, straddling the road, you'll see the camp and the headquarters of Colonel James Veach and his brigade. So they're camped back in the woods on the other side of this field. The morning of April 6, 1862 brings the sound of thunder to the south. Cannons, the shredding sounds of volleys of musketry come floating up on the wind. In the camps of Veach's brigade, the men are at breakfast. Sunday, preparing for inspection. These are pretty well trained and pretty well experienced soldiers. If you look at two of these Illinois regiments, they have small numbers, right? 14 and 15. That means these are some of the first men to enlist. These are men, those two regiments have been in the service for a year. They've enlisted in April of 1861. The 46th Illinois enlisted a little later, but they have some good experience. Veach is a good commander. They do a lot of training. Their regimental officers are highly capable. And so on this morning, a well-trained Union brigade in their camp hears that firing. As they hear that firing, they are polishing their buttons, they are dusting their coats, they are cleaning their weapons, getting ready for Sunday inspection. They finish their breakfast, they finish their cleaning, and they wait for orders that will send them to the front. Now the fighting at the front. Those 44,500 Confederates have fallen on the two most advanced Union divisions. General Benjamin Prentice's division, we talked about that earlier this morning, and General William T. Sherman's division over by Shiloh Church. These thousands of Confederates are coming out of the forest and attacking Sherman's camp. Sherman has been surprised. He did not expect to see them. He did not expect to be attacked. But now his mind is clearing. He's realizing that he's under serious attack and he needs help. He sent for help, a message back for help from General John A. McClernand. And another messenger went to General Stephen Hurlbut to ask if he could send help to General Sherman. At the same time, General Prentice sent for help from General Hurlbut. So General Hurlbut had two requests for help in his hand at the same time. He made a natural enough decision. He decided he had 3 brigades. He could split his division up, send one of the brigades to help General Sherman, and that he would take the other 2 and help General Prentice. He chose Colonel Veach's brigade for the brigade to go help General Sherman. So the long roll was sounded in the camps of Veach's brigade. The men of the 4 regiments fell in on their color lines. Their guns were polished and their ammunition boxes were full. They were ready for the fight. They came marching out about 9 in the morning when the battle is raging in front of Sherman's headquarters. They came marching out the Hamburg to Savannah Road. They turned right and followed the main Corinth Road right past here and headed for the western side of the battlefield. They didn't know what was coming. Veach didn't know who he would report to when he got there. He knew he was looking for General Sherman, didn't know where he would find him. But at that time, at about 9 o'clock, that brigade comes marching right along this road and out toward the Crossroads area. At the same time, Hurlbut organized his other 2 brigades. They marched out the Hamburg-Savannah Road. Those are the men who would fight for the Peach Orchard position on the eastern side of the battlefield. We are going to follow the Illinois and Indiana troops of Veach's brigade down toward Sherman's position and find out what kind of help they can provide there. So, follow me. Headquarters of Union General Leonard Ross. General Ross was not present for the battle. His brigade of the Union 1st Division was commanded by Colonel Julius Rafe. But the headquarters was here. This is the Joseph Duncan house. So this is the Duncan Field. Sunken Road, Hornet's Nest, North Duncan Field. It's called Duncan Field because Joseph Duncan owns it. Here's where his house was. He was not home during the battle. He was not at this house during the battle. He actually lived in Hamburg. He had a number of properties. There's some evidence that his daughter and her family may have been in the house during the battle. But on the second day of the battle, as the Union troops are counterattacking, as General Buell's Army of the Ohio is counterattacking in that direction, and General Grant's Army of the Tennessee is counterattacking in this direction. General McCook's division of General Buell's army attacks straight up the Corinth Road. We'll even talk about this tomorrow. They attack straight up the Corinth Road. The regular brigade that we talk about tomorrow will be attacking through North Duncan Field and through those woods. And as they attack in this direction and Buell attacks in that direction, McCook's left and Buell's right separate. They're going in different directions. So someone needs to fill that gap. Right at that moment, when someone needed to fill that gap, the remnants of Colonel James Veach's brigade came marching up behind the remnants of General Hurlbut's division. And at that point, I believe it was General McCook saw them coming up, realized that they needed to fill this gap, and at that point Veach, with the 4 regiments in column of regiments, meaning they weren't in a line of battle, there was 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 behind each other, advanced to this position, and from this headquarters they charged straight through this area that is Ruggles Battery on the first day of the battle, right through those woods, straight through the review field, across the review field and into the lost field position, and there they meet the Confederates, and they have the last fight, one of the last fights of the Battle of Shiloh, late on the second day of the battle. One of the last attacks by the Union Army before the Confederates drew off were these guys, Veach's brigade, attacking straight through this line, through those guns and on down. But first we have to go back a day and figure out how this brigade got so desperately under strength. So follow me and we'll finish this list. And right up this road, heading toward General Sherman's encampment. By the time he gets to this position, Veach halted his brigade and faced to the south. Looked out in this area, probably looked out across Review Field and said, yeah, this would be a good place for me to help out. It's a good place for me to make a stand. General John McClernand's division was already deploying through these woods right here, and Captain Edward McAllister's battery 24-pounder howitzers were going into position here. So Veach imagined that this would be a good place that he might be needed to support the line. Support the line, meaning make a line of battle just to the rear of someone else's line of battle to support them, to back them up. As soon as he got here and got his regiment shaken out into line of battle, he got a message from General McClernand, who is deploying over there. And he said, no, I don't want you here. I want you down this direction toward the Crossroads. So at that, Veach had to order his brigade to right face and head straight down this road. First leg. Told you it would be a doozy. We've reenacted the better part of Veach's march to this position. But now we are actually, the next few are going to be easier because we're going to go back. We've marched all the way to the right of his battle line. He has deployed his division here in support of McClernand's division, with the 15th Illinois on the right, the 46th Illinois next, the 14th Illinois after that, and the 25th Indiana on the left flank. They're shaken out in a full line of battle. You can, this last leg of our walk has been the frontage of that brigade at full strength. Now there's some problems with Veach's new position. some pretty serious problems with the position he's been put in. He's supposed to support General McClernand, but he is much too close to General McClernand's line. General McClernand has placed him here, but if you look behind you, see that these are Illinois monuments. They all look like this. And so as you see, this is a very Illinois intensive part of the battle, and these monuments all mark the action that's going to occur right at this time. So it's about 10:30. It was about 10:30 on Sunday morning. The Confederates had driven back General Sherman's division. They had gotten around his left flank and they'd shot through that hole in the line. They'd also reoriented their attack to attack to the north and the northwest. It appears as though they thought they had turned the left flank of their enemy. This is General Johnston's battle plan. Turn the left flank of the enemy, drive him into the swamps, and destroy him. So now you see General McClernand has deployed his brigade facing more or less southeast. No longer south, southeast. Those Confederates have turned and they are heading north and northwest. Anyway, for Veach to be of much help, he is much too close to the men in front. Finally, General Sherman is retreating from his camp. So Sherman's division is coming back through those woods on the other side of the Crossroads. And as they come back to the Hamburg-Purdy Road, a number of things go wrong for them. They decide to Sherman wants to make a stand there. He wants to make a stand on the prolongation of McClernand's line. But as he arrives at that position at the Crossroads, his 1st Brigade, McDowell's brigade, whose camps are way over by the park entrance over there, McDowell has decided to try to send his baggage trains to the rear for safety, his supply trains. So those wagons are coming straight down the Hamburg-Purdy Road at the exact minute General Sherman is trying to form that line. General Sherman is trying to form a fallback line in the midst of a traffic jam. And the Confederates are following very closely. The Confederates come storming out of those woods. Sherman deploys that battery of artillery, Von Baer's battery, right over there. At the first Confederate volley, Captain Baer is killed. His troops abandon their guns. The Confederates rush forward and capture those guns. And then General Sherman's division, as one historian from the time put it, General Sherman's division gave way at all points at the same time. The entire division just dissolved and routed for the rear. So those Confederates were now streaming across the Hamburg-Purdy Road around the flank of General McClernand's division and around the flank of Colonel Veach's brigade. At the same time, that large Confederate attack that went through Prentice's division, reoriented, turned north and northwest, they come bounding out of those woods, firing volleys, spitting flame into McClernand's front line. And within about 15 or 20 minutes, some of the 15 or 20 minutes of the bloodiest fighting of the Battle of Shiloh occurred along that line as those Confederates came up and they just tore McClernand's 2nd Brigade to pieces. But as we were talking about before, McClernand's men are veterans. McClernand's men have been in the Army for a year. They're early enlistees. They've been at Fort Donelson. They've been in other battles. And they stand there and they die, and they stand there and they knock down as many Confederates as they are being knocked down. But those Confederates roll right over McClernand's line, and those guys come tumbling back toward Veach. Now, before we pick up on that, first we're going to look at the experience of the 15th Illinois Infantry, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Edward F.W. Ellis. They're in position right here. They see the line in front of them crumbling. They already see the Confederates coming around their flank, and at that moment, the Confederates reorient and they start ripping a flanking fire right down the 15th Illinois. And men, especially in the right flank companies, begin to fall, and they fall in a straight line right along their line of battle. Lieutenant Colonel Ellis, their commander, is wounded. A mini ball passes through his wrist, and so he jumps up on a log right behind the regiment. He's got his sword in his good hand, and the regimental adjutant is trying to bandage his right hand while he's waving the sword, trying to rally the men. Hold on, fire. At that moment, a Confederate mini ball pierces his chest, goes right through him. He pitches over backwards, and he is dead. At the same moment, the Major Goddard, and who would be the second in command, is also killed at virtually the same moment. And especially the right flank of the 15th is just shredded. One of the privates in the line of battle, a guy named Lucius Barber, left a really great memoir, reminiscence of the Battle of Shiloh. And right at this moment, when they're getting flanked and they're all getting shot and they start to fall back, Barber writes in his memoir, is at that point I thought to myself, this is no place for Lute Barber. And so Lute Barber and the rest of the 15th take off, and they retreat this way. They race the Confederates to try to get away from them. And so Veach's brigade is already starting to crumble from the right flank as he is flanked. And at the same time, the Confederates attack this way. The next stop is the next Illinois monument, the 46th. So let's get up and move on down there, and we can stop for a few minutes. 6th Illinois Infantry, Colonel John Davies commanding. And again, you see, as the monuments show you, they are in a perfect line of battle, linking into the 15th on the right and linking into the 14th over there. The problem that's occurring here, though, has less to do with what's happening on the flank. It's what's happening directly in front of them. No more than 50 yards in front of him, those Confederates are storming right through the 2nd Brigade, Marsh's brigade of General McClernand's division. And as those men start to fall back, as those troops up there start to fall back, they come rushing right back at the 46th Illinois. And so these guys cannot fire. They cannot fire at their friends who are still rushing at them, but the Confederates are right behind them. The Confederates are in a full charge, driving. It's Sam Wood's brigade in a full charge, breaking right through the line. The other thing most important, as you see here, over here is a battery of 6 cannons, Burroughs 14th Ohio Battery. The Confederates are also rushing right up to the barrels of Burroughs' battery, and Burroughs' men are just loading double canister, and they're just belching double canister into Wood's brigade, and Wood's brigade stops, and they let loose a volley that just slaughters Burroughs' horses. All of those horses, 72 horses, lined up behind those six guns, are just shot in their traces and massacred right there. So two things are happening in front of Davis's regiment, and they can't even fight back. The refugees from McClernand's division break right through Davis's ranks. Davis's men, some of them lie down so that the refugees can pass over them, and then they can jump back up and try to shoot. They do their best in all of this disorganization to try to get a line of battle together, but it's very difficult, and the Confederates are right on top of them. On the right flank, Company A, Captain John Musser is in command of that company, and he's cheering his men on, trying to get them to stand their ground. He's struck in the leg, struck dead on in the leg by a mini ball. It shatters his leg, it knocks him over. He struggled back to his feet and seems to have decided that this was a fatal wound in any case, and so he threw down his sword, picked up the musket of one of his dead men, and began firing as rapidly as he could at the Confederates. At the meantime, Company A started to fall back, and the rest of the regiment started to fall back. They also retreated straight through Water Oaks Pond after the 15th Illinois, heading straight over there. Captain Musser's men finally grabbed him, grabbed the musket out of his hand, picked him up and carried him to the rear. He managed to survive to get home to Illinois, but he died shortly after his leg was amputated in his hometown. I think he was from Orangeburg, Illinois. And so the 46th is now swept off the battle line. The Confederates have turned the right of the brigade. They're spilling over the front of the brigade. These two regiments are disappearing to the rear at a run, having taken enormous casualties. Move on to the 14th Illinois and find out what happened to them. Illinois, commanded by Colonel Cyrus Hall, is the next in line for the rough treatment from the Confederates. And indeed, that Confederate attack expands all the way across the front. Thousands of the Confederates are coming through those woods. The most difficult part for Colonel Hall is that on his right flank, back there toward where that road is, the Confederates have killed all those horses of Burroughs' battery. They've killed most of his horses, but some of the other horses are either still alive or mortally wounded, and they're cut out of their traces, and they're running this way and they're running that way, and the survivors of the surviving gunners of Burroughs' battery are making a run for it. So those horses and those wagons and those limbers and some of those gunners break through the right flank of Hall's regiment. But Hall's regiment does not rout. The 14th does not rout like the 46th and the 15th do. But the right flank is pushed back into this field. Whereas the center would be right here where the monument is. The center where the colors are, where Colonel Hall is, these guys hold on. And those guys down there hold on. And the right wing is able to rally and reform in making sort of an L-shaped formation. So as the Confederates are pushing through here, and now they're attacking this 11th Iowa Regiment, they're going to drive them off as well. But the 14th, the right flank of the 14th, is now, they can pour volleys into the Confederates as they push through here. And the Confederates are suffering very severe casualties at this time as well. Remember what I said back there at the 15th Illinois Monument? This is some of the bloodiest 15 or 20 minutes of fighting in the Battle of Shiloh. It's taken me more than 20 minutes to tell the story. These are the same 15 minutes that I'm reciting at each of these monuments. It's the same maelstrom of bloodshed and terror. What's happening in the immediate front? The 45th, the 48th and 45th Illinois regiments from General McClernand's division are deployed in these woods. The woods aren't like they are today. They were more open with the large trees, as we talked about earlier this morning. But over here, Captain McAllister's battery. You remember when we saw them on the way out, those 4 24-pounder howitzers. The Confederates have tried to attack through Review Field, and those howitzers have just butchered them. I mean, howitzers, 24-pounder munitions. They're smoothbore, they're siege guns. And so when the Union gunners stuffed double canister down there, they're just shooting the kitchen sink all the way across that field. The 4th Tennessee Regiment, making that attack, suffers 198 casualties before they get halfway across the field. Their commander, Colonel Otho Strahl, finally says enough of this. He halts the 4th. They turn to their left and they march into the woods to escape the fire from McAllister's battery. Then they reform and they continue their attack. Well, these woods are filled with smoke. These woods are filled with smoke from the musketry and from the cannon fire, and the 14th can stand here and watch this whole thing happen in front of them. And as Strahl's regiment approaches this line of battle, along with some other Confederates, for whatever reason, Union officers in that front line have gotten the impression that those are retreating Union troops from Sherman's division trying to make a getaway. And as they get closer, you would have heard, if you'd stood here, you could have heard those officers shouting through those two regiments, "Don't fire, those are our men, don't fire, those are friends." And Strahl and his Tennesseans march right up to the face of that line of battle. They raise up their muskets and they fire. It's like a firing squad. Those two regiments are just shot down in their tracks. The men don't know what to think. They think they're being shot by their own friends. Their officers are still yelling, don't shoot, they're our friends. Those two regiments break up and they fall to the rear. In the case of the 14th, well-trained regiment, Colonel Hall orders his men to lie down. The refugees pass over them. They stand up again and they engage the Confederates, who are immediately in front of them. Now this Confederate pressure does push the 14th back. And so the whole regiment, still in its L-shaped formation, begins retreating back across Wolf Field. That's this field right here. But retreating, fighting across Wolf Field. Next up. Looking things. Obelisk. Thank you very much. And the Indiana chose not to build a single state monument. They just have a monument for each of their regiments. Illinois built an Illinois monument and monuments for each of their regiments as well. Here's the 25th Indiana. Here are those Democrats from South Indiana. Those conservative Democrats from South Indiana, commanded by the Republican James Veach. Although Colonel Veach does his commanding, of course, in the center of his brigade. Lieutenant Colonel William Morgan is commanding the 25th Indiana. As all of this is happening to the Illinois troops, it's happening to the Indiana troops too. The Confederates, once they blow through these two Illinois regiments, they're now around the flank of Captain McAllister's battery. Captain McAllister now has to limber up and get his guns out of there just as quickly as he can, and it's the 25th Indiana that's going to provide cover for him to do that. But the Confederates are right on them. The Confederates are coming right across that field, right through these woods, and only 3 of McAllister's guns escape. Only 3 crews are able to get their guns out of there. And they would have come pounding past the flank of the 25th here, or even through the line, and straight up the line to the rear. At that point, when the front is clear, the 25th Indiana can open fire, and they did. They opened fire and they engaged the Confederates right here where those Illinois monuments now are, and with more very bloody fighting, all in the same 15 to 20 minutes, in around 10:30 in the morning. And this entire Union front is collapsing. Over there to the left, you see an Iowa monument. That's the 13th Iowa. Colonel Robert Shaver's brigade. We met them this morning on the attack on Prentice's camp. Shaver's brigade attacks right across Review Field, strikes this brigade, the 1st Brigade of McClernand's division, in the front, and it drives them back. They're driven back through these woods, and their left flank is down there in Duncan Field. So we're touching on the Hornet's Nest part of the battlefield now. They're driven straight back, and that leaves the 25th as the left flank regiment of this entire part of the line. And everything on the right is being borne to the rear. So the Confederates are able to get around the flank of the 25th. Now they're getting flanked on the left and really cut up pretty bad. So at this point, Colonel Hall of the 14th and Colonel Morgan of the 25th, I believe they have Veach with them, began a fighting retreat. So the 14th is able to move slowly to the rear, either walking backwards or walking back and turning around and firing at the enemy that's pursuing them. The 25th does the same thing. And both of the regiments retreat toward General McClernand's headquarters. And that's where we're going to go right now. We have just traversed would have been the area covered by these two regiments as they fell back fighting, driven by the Confederates. If you look through the foliage here, or through the trees here, there's not much foliage. You can see a flash of white up there, and that is the concrete from the base of the monument for General McClernand's division headquarters. So as you see right now, we're about 300 yards south and west of McClernand's headquarters. And here, these two regiments continue to fight, and they're basically positioned looking south and looking west. Confederates, especially coming through this area right here, which is now wide open. On their right, though, the two regiments from their own brigade plus McClernand's division have been totally routed. And those men are fleeing back through these woods behind us in a northerly direction. And so for a while, during the time when this fighting is going on, it says from 11 to 11:30, the 25th and the 14th are pretty much on their own out here, just fighting Confederates that mill around them. Fortunately for the Federals and for these guys, these Confederates, like the Confederates that previously captured Prentice's division, Prentice's camp, are utterly exhausted. They're utterly exhausted. They haven't eaten. They've shot up all of their ammunition. They've replenished it and shot up some more. They've fought all morning long. They've just rushed forward in this great 30-minute slaughter and pushed this far, and they've driven the enemy from their front, and they fall out and they begin to sack the Union camps. McClernand's camps are over here. McClernand's headquarters is back there. They stop the pursuit and they fall to looting, which gives the 25th and the 14th, Colonel Veach, a chance to pull out of this position after fighting off their pursuers and get to the rear well organized. And that's what they're going to do. And our next move is going to be overland without the trail. And let's look at a map to get our bearings. 4.5 miles to this. 400 yards to 4.5 miles. I assure you, this is exactly 30 degrees from at 400 yards, but we kind of took that way.
We're not back at the same spot we were, are we?
No, we are not. We are in the new spot. We are in the new spot. We just took the scenic route. So they fall back. 25th Indiana and 14th Illinois fall back to this position. As our tablet explains to us, they got back to this position by 11:30, and at the same time, straight across this drainage, the 46th Illinois and the 15th Illinois are rallying with General McClernand's division. They are also rallying with what's left of General Sherman's division. And one of General Sherman's brigades had not been engaged. One of General Sherman's brigades, his first brigade, McDowell, had not been smashed in that attack at the traffic jam. So all these men start to coalesce. They start to come together and reorganize in the Jonesfield area, which is on the other side of this ravine. And at the same time, these two regiments find that they are not being pursued, and they're able to stop here and hold the Confederates back. So at that point, with the Confederates sacking the Union camps, after McClernand and Sherman have rallied their troops in Jonesfield, McClernand and Sherman decide what they're going to do is counterattack. They're not going to wait for the Confederates to reorganize and attack them again. They counterattack. And so as the counterattack comes through on the other side of this ravine, McClernand and Sherman press right on through, and the battle erupts again over here to the west of General McClernand's headquarters. These two regiments ape the counterattack coming out of Jonesfield, and they reorganize into a line of battle, and they go back the way they came. We won't. They go back the way they came, and they counterattack, getting almost as far as McClernand's headquarters. So you remember where we could see McClernand's headquarters from the previous tablet, which is 400 yards straight over there. They cover the entire ground. They counterattack as far as McClernand's headquarters, and then when the Confederates reorganize and they reform, they bring their superior numbers to bear, and they start to push all of these Union troops back across this area again. Having fought across it twice, they're pushed back again. Now, our next goal, as this tells us, the next thing they did was they moved to the right and then to the rear. What they're actually doing, and we're going to cut it off a little bit, we're actually going to seek the drainage now. We go down into the ravine, and right here on our front right, we see a feeder ravine that falls into Tillman Branch, and then to our left, we see Tillman Branch. Am I right about that, Woody? I'm describing that. So we're going to go straight on down into Tillman Branch, and then we're going to follow Tillman all the way down to where, or this creek of Tillman, all the way down to where it falls into the main branch of Tillman Branch. We're just going to follow along the bottom of that ravine, and we will roughly be following the line of retreat of these two regiments in the afternoon at 2:30 or between around 2 o'clock as they're being pushed back down that ravine. That's the Jones Field area. That's the area where the 46th and the 15th have fallen back with Sherman and McClernand, counterattacked, and now they're being pushed back again. So at this time, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, obviously the 14th and the 25th do not know that their comrades are just up over the hill, but they are also being pushed back in retreating, fighting back through Jones Field. That bisects the battlefield, running toward the west and falling into Owl Creek, creates a major impediment to military movement. And at 2:30, General Sherman and General McClernand, who are fighting in Jones Field, are forced to fall back across it, come across these huge barriers, cross it, and then head straight up the other side. And that briefly puts a little bit of sunlight between them and their pursuers. The Confederates will now have to attack across Tillman Branch, and this is not going to be good if the Federals are permitted to establish a good position up here on top. So that's what we have at about 2:30. At 2:30, fighting dies away on this side of the battlefield for a short time, while Sherman and McClernand successfully disengage, cross Tillman Branch, and head back up. And the 14th and the 25th, along with the 46th and the 15th, who are further down there, all make this move up onto the top of this hill.
And this being a lot more water on this hill.
It would have been more wet then. Yeah, a lot more water in Tillman Branch then. And all of the low ground around it would have been mushy morass, soft. Very hard on the artillery.
On the time.
to get out of Tillman Branch. But okay, we remember back in Review Field when McAllister's battery was overrun and they escaped with 3 of their 4 guns right in front of the 25th Indiana, and here we meet them again. They were able to fall back to Jones Field and then thence across the Tillman Branch, and they set up right here. At this position this is merely trivia, but at this position you see the only mounted cavalry charge of the battle. Colonel John Wharton and his 8th Texas Terry's Texas Rangers, the 8th Texas, decided if they could come pounding up the road fast enough after the Federals had retreated, they might catch them on the run and cut them up. But they weren't fast enough. By the time they got across and came up here, McAllister was already set, and he was able to sweep the cavalry field area in this road with canister, as well as some infantry who had stopped and fired, and Wharton turned around and went back into Tillman Branch as fast as he'd come. In the meantime, the people we're following, the 14th Illinois and the 25th Indiana, continued back up the cavalry road because they were probably starting to surmise that something pretty nasty was boiling up over in this direction to the north. And that would also be, if it was something nasty, it would be happening between them and their objective of getting away. So let's head up the road a little. First of all, I want to tell you that it is now 4, so we have reached the end of our allotted time period for this program. And I don't want to keep you if you have plans. I can tell you though that there is no other program today until the evening talk at the Visitor Center. There is also one stop after this one, and then we walk back to the car. So that is the scope of what we're trying to accomplish here. The park did ask me if we went long, to try to get the cars out of Stacy Field by 5. But we are not, 5 is not my goal for this program. It was 4. But we're gonna do a short stand right here, get up and walk back up to the road, and then around the corner to the final spot, and wrap it up there, and then walk up to the cars. If you're out of time, I understand. And the road here, paved road, leads straight down that way, curves to the right. When you come out to the right, you'll see that Michigan monument right in front of you, the place where you originally parked. And you can walk right up there and be at your car. You're probably about 15 minutes from your car right now. Otherwise, let's do the last couple of stands here. Now, as I said, the 14th and the 25th came moving back, retreating along that road. You saw as we fell back, there were monuments marking that there were other Union units out there down along the road. But as I said, they would have been perceiving something very distressing happening to the north. They would have also had something rather distressing happening to the south. So I'm going to explain overall what's going on and how they're perceiving it. When General Sherman and General McClernand retreated across Tillman Branch, back there, they broke off contact with the Confederates. At that point, the Confederates pursuing them needed to make a decision about what they were going to do. And at that time, the Union forces defending the center of the battlefield, what's known as the Hornet's Nest, were still holding out. They were still holding out, and this is the time when Ruggles battery is pounding them. That would have been the background noise for all of this fighting. Boom, 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 the Ruggles battery. And the Confederates decided, probably utilizing the old Napoleonic maxim, march to the sound of the guns, they decided to march toward the Hornet's Nest. They decided to march toward where they knew the Federals were still fighting. And so most of that Confederate force that is pursuing crossed Tillman Branch on that side of the road, attacked up through that terrain. They they kind of bounced off the Union defenses on the other side of the road. I kind of think of it as bouncing off. They hit those Union defenses, found a gap on the far side, on the Union left, on their right. They slid to the right. They passed right through that gap, and the next thing you know, they were marching up around the back end of the Hornet's Nest, getting ready to capture that. The Union line here is now facing a vacuum. However, the leftmost forces in the Confederate Army, the ones that are furthest to the west during the northward attack, which would be General Hardee with a couple of regiments and battalions of cavalry, some artillery, and one brigade of infantry, a Louisiana brigade under the command of Colonel Preston Pond. And that Louisiana brigade has been just tracing the left flank of the Confederate attack all day. Their job has been to hang on to Owl Creek with their left. So they have not been engaged in heavy combat. Their job has just been to be the left of the Confederate attack. They do not follow the attack on Hornets Nest. They continue to the north, and then they bear to the east, and General Hardee directs them down into Tillman Branch. Colonel Pond comes down into Tillman Branch, which is it's over there, and it's running that way. But to our north and to our west is a very deep feeder branch for Tillman that runs like this. Or actually falls into Tillman Branch that way. You can see the land here falling off into that ravine. So Pond found himself down there in that feeder ravine. He didn't really know what to do. Pretty soon orders came carried by Colonel Samuel Ferguson of General Hardee's staff officer. And Ferguson's orders are, General Pond, you are to attack. You are to attack up this hill. Colonel Pond said, I think there's a lot of Yankees up there. We're alone out here. I don't know if that, will you confirm? He has a right to ask the staff officer to confirm the order. Go back to General Hardee, confirm the order. At the same time, Hardee is establishing batteries in Jonesfield, and those batteries are starting to take this position under fire. And so Colonel Ferguson comes back to Colonel Pond and says the orders are confirmed, you need to attack. And exactly what he wants to do, he wants Pond to attack out of that feeder ravine and attack McAllister's battery, that battery back down the road that drove away the cavalry attack. He wants to attack them in the flank. Pond, come up, attack that battery in the flank. Order confirmed, Pond has to do it. He doesn't feel good about it because he doesn't have anybody on his left. But just at that moment, he is getting somebody on his left, as the 14th Illinois and the 25th Indiana fall into position facing down into the ravine. Now at the same time, if you recall walking along the road up there, there's another tablet up there with the 29th Illinois facing this way. And then down from that, there's a monument of the 52nd Illinois facing this way. It's an L-shaped ambush. Pond is attacking right into an L-shaped ambush. The Federals could not have set up a better ambush if they had thought it out ahead of time. It happened accidentally, but they couldn't have done it better if they thought it out ahead of time. Well, Pond orders the attack. Those three of his regiments, including the 18th Louisiana Acadian Regiment from what's now Lafayette, Vermilion, back then, Vermilionville? I don't know Louisiana well. But those Acadians come attacking straight up through here with other Louisiana troops to the left and others to the west and others to the west of them, and they walk right into this ambush. And McAllister limbers up his cannons and they start pounding down this road. They just gallop down this road. McAllister gets his cannons out of the way, and now it's just Pond walking into the trap. And those Louisianans march right up here. These guys, as it says here, assisted repelling Pond's brigade. They're assisting by firing right into their flank. The Louisiana flank would have been right down there, the 18th Louisiana, and they just would have been mowing them down. At the same time, up at the top of the hill, the 29th Illinois is firing into them. The 52nd is firing into them. They march right up. They halt. They form a battle line, and for probably 30 minutes, around 4:30, there is a very vicious and bloody battle fought in this low ground below Cavalry Road. and there's just no way that the Louisiana Brigade can break through. They've got these guys on their flanks just shooting them up. So after about probably 30 minutes, they fall back into the ravine. The 18th Louisiana reports 218 casualties in the battle. They all happened right there. Most of them are missing, which I think describes the nature of the fight. The Acadians were driven back into the ravine without being able to take their wounded and their dead with them. So when they accounted for their casualties, they weren't able to say who was dead and who was wounded and who was still alive when they left him. Most of those guys fell into the hands of the Federals and either became prisoners or died of their wounds. With the repulse of Pond's brigade, this ends the major fighting on the right flank, on the west flank of the battle. And it's time for the 14th Illinois and the 25th Indiana to fall back from this position. It's a little after 4:30, and a crisis is being reached over in the Hornet's Nest. We're going to talk about that briefly at our next stop. Let's head back up to the road and then head on down toward Veach's headquarters.